Fears of another Crimea unfolding in Ukraine. What worries Canadian banks about Facebook? And 1 year after the Boston bombing, why one Canadian is running again. Welcome to Globe Now. I'm Afan Chaudhry. First, Crimea was annexed by Russia. Now there are fears more of Ukraine will be carved up. Take a look at this map of eastern Ukraine and the border it shares with Russia. Pro-Russian separatists and gunmen have been taking over government buildings and cities throughout the region. Satellite images show that there's a buildup of Russian forces on the eastern side of the border. Sound familiar? Well, it should. Like Crimea, eastern Ukraine has a large Russian-speaking population. It seems beyond the control of the new government in Kiev. And much like in Crimea, countries like Canada and the US are blaming Russia. Prime Minister Stephen Harper has said the unrest is the work of Russian provocateurs sent by the Putin regime. His foreign minister has said the same and will be visiting Eastern Europe next week to meet with allies. The question yet again is, who can stop Russia? Well, Facebook could soon become Facebank. According to the Financial Times, the social network is looking to operate as a digital wallet in Ireland. Our banking reporter, Tim Kaladze, is here to discuss this move and what it means for Canadian banks. Welcome.
Great to be here.
What is the concern that Canadian banks have?
The big fear, and this is something that they've worried about for a long time, is that they'll be disrupted. And so what essentially that means is that the business model will change and it won't look anything like what it used to be in the past. And the best analogy I can give for this would be the Canadian telcos, so Rogers, Bell, Telus. When services like Skype came into play, it more or less kind of cut out their long distance service charges, which used to be a big fat fee for them, or a big fat revenue model. So the banks worry that if Facebook and Apple and Google move into payments, that takes away one of the core issues or one of the core business models that the banks provide.
Interesting. So let's talk about the consumers. What would a Facebank mean for consumers?
At this point, it's no one really knows. There's a lot of hype around it, and I think there's a lot of fear factor in that hype. What we know so far is that it appears as though Facebook wants to get into basically email transfers, what we would do to send money to one another. And what I think the market they're targeting is the market where someone who lives in, say, the UK could send money home to someone in a developing country. So that kind of a transfer. But who knows where it grows to. And then you also have the likes of Google moving into mobile payments and allowing you to pay for things with your smartphone. So the possibilities are really endless. And I think that's why the banks are really concerned, because they don't want to get left behind out of nowhere.
Now, we put the question to our readers, would you trust Facebook with your money? And
right.
we got some interesting answers. A lot of them were negative. I'll share one with you here. This is from Taya Kurdi. No, I wouldn't trust them because this is not a bank, it's a social network. And with privacy such an issue already, why would I trust them any further? What do you think?
I think, truthfully, a lot of the concern is mental.
Yeah.
Because if you look at services like PayPal, that came up in the early 2000s, and at first people weren't really sure what to make of it. But once you add in things like payments, there's a whole level of extra security involved. Now, that being said, the biggest thing that the banks have going for them is the security issue. And if you think the banks are going to take this all just kind of lying down, you'd be shocked. They are ready to market very heavily and prove, Canadians can trust us, and we have X years of experience, and that's why you need to kind of move your money and keep your money with us. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see kind of a war of that sort start to play out.
So what are the Canadian banks doing in response to Facebook?
Well, RBC would actually be a classic example in that they've already teamed up with Facebook to launch an actual money transfer service through Facebook's messaging service. So they're actually trying to get ahead of the curve and view it more as a partnership and team up with them rather than create this all-out war that I talked about, in which no one really knows who's going to win, and the future could look very different.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Tim.
No problem.
Well, so what do you think? Is a so-called Facebank something you'd welcome in your life? You can tweet us your thoughts at Globe Now. And now to our next story. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing. We caught up with a Calgary runner, Julie Suffield, who had just finished when the attacks happened. She explains why it's so important to her to run the race again. Take a look.
My name is Julie Suffield, and I'm from Calgary, Alberta. Last year, I ran the Boston Marathon on April 15th. It was the perfect marathon day. The weather was perfect. It wasn't too sunny. The temperature was right. My goal was to complete the marathon and requalify. I did that. I crossed the finish line with a couple of minutes to spare. And as I was standing at the finish line, there was a loud bang. You could hear people screaming. The people right behind me thought it was a terrorist attack. I kept saying, I don't understand, I don't understand. My husband was out on the course. I thought, oh my heavens, where is he? I had no idea. One of my training partners was behind me just slightly, and I had no idea where she was, and then another explosion happened. Everybody in our running group and everyone that I knew from Calgary at the marathon was safe, including all of the spectators, thankfully. My motivation, I guess, for running this year is I don't want that to be my last memory of Boston. I don't want that to be the defining moment of my Boston Marathon experience. I want to run out of respect for the people that were injured, and the people who died, and the city itself. I think it makes me appreciate the little things more. It makes me very thankful that I can run. There's going to be a lot of mixed emotions, but I hope it will be a recovery process for me as well. When I reach the finish line, it'll be very emotional, and I hope it will be celebratory and joyful.
Well, before we sign off today, we'd like to give you an update on the Bluefin 21 story we reported on yesterday. Well, it appears the search area is too deep because the robotic submarine returned to the surface after it exceeded its maximum depth of 4.5 kilometers. The data it did collect was analyzed, and there was nothing of note. Well, that's it for Globe Now. Thanks for watching. If you've got a minute, hop onto Twitter and let us know your thoughts on this new Facebook bank idea or the situation in the Ukraine. And we're at Globe Now. Thanks again. I'm Afan Chaudhry.